stress is a huge one. The CDC now says that stress is more toxic than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, which I think is hilarious because I think a lot of smokers are probably a lot less stressed than the rest of us because they take a smoke break every hour. Don't take that and go pick up smoking, but take that and go, oh, maybe taking a 10-minute break from work every hour actually is going to be good for my health.
All right, welcome to another episode of Medical Entrepreneur. We have a very special guest with us, Hally Brooke, the founder and CEO of Live Nourished Coaching. She's a certified functional medicine nutritional counselor, nationally board certified health and wellness coach. Take it away, Hally.
Adam, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I am a huge functional medicine nerd. I'm also a huge business nerd. So I love looking at businesses and figuring out how to grow them and tweak them and make them more efficient. And it's super fun to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Man, it's my pleasure. One of the things that I thought was really, really cool was that you are so passionate about this industry, but also you approach it through a kind of a scientific lens, if you will. And my understanding is also you have a history of basically in education, being a mathematics teacher. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. So straight out of college, I thought I wanted to go to med school, did a 2-year stint in Teach for America just to kind of figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, and ended up teaching for 9 years. So I taught for 9 years in Harrison District 2, which is here in Colorado Springs and is a low income, kind of high risk district. And it was awesome. And it was super high stress and super hard. And so I ended up getting super sick because super high stress for 9 years will really kind of mess you up. And so from there, I ended up, leaving teaching. I got a personal training certificate just to do something else. And then kind of started embarking on my own health journey, figuring out, why my gut was so messed up. I was super sick. I had dark circles under my eyes. I had no relation to how much I slept. My arms went numb randomly. It seemed like I had rashes all over my body. Like I was not okay. I got shingles at 24, which just shouldn't ever happen. And a lot of my doctors just said, well, I had one doctor specifically who said, yeah, you've got IBS. And so it sounds like chicken and lettuce is what you can digest. So just eat that forever. And I was like, that cannot be the answer. It's got to be something else. And so I sort of stumbled into functional medicine while I was personal training, looking for solutions for myself. And then I'm a nerd. So, while my clients are doing squats, I'm telling them all these cool things that I'm learning. And it ended up being my clients, all of them, who said, Hally, this is your thing. You got to go back to school. So I did. So 2019, December of 2019, I enrolled in Institute for Functional Medicine, FMCA Coaching Academy. And then 2020 happened. And so I went to school through the pandemic. I sort of slowly pivoted my personal training practice from, in person to online because the pandemic happened. And then from personal training into kind of functional medicine, nutrition and health coaching. And then really because of the pandemic, my practice exploded because so many people were looking for alternative health and other options and, what else can I do? And so I started by hiring an admin assistant and then I maxed out again. And then I hired one of my friends from my class, my graduating class. And then we sort of started doing this together. And then, we both maxed out and we're like, this isn't going to work. And so I sort of stepped into business development role and she stepped into head coaching role. And here we are. So we now have clients from Australia to Canada and all over the United States. And we support doctors all over the US, Canada, and Mexico.
Man, that is wonderful. And I think that, one thing you touched on was just the demand for people looking for alternative solutions. And I think ever since the pandemic, people's faith in medicine and particularly, the farm industry, right, is all-time lows. And so I see everyone, even for most of our clinics, like everybody's looking for some kind of alternative or at least willing to consider it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. There's a doctor who I love and follow on Instagram, Dr. James D. Nicolantonio. And he has a quote that I just love that I think is really accurate that says, if you have a doctor who prescribes you a medication without first asking you about your sleep, your relationships, your nutrition, your movement, and your stress, you have a drug dealer, not a doctor. And that's a really stanky statement, but I think it's really true. I think people are starting to realize that prescriptions have a place and they're really important. And Western medicine is so powerful and truly life-saving medicine and amazing. And a lot of our diseases are coming from what we put in our bodies, how we treat our bodies, the relationships that we have, the sleep that we're not getting, that kind of stuff. And people are looking for support in that.
Man, you really have a great point. And I think also what I see in medicine is a lot of almost like willingness to not look at situations that are happening or address them. One such example is just like the hormone disruption and just throughout the world. I mean, as you can see with both men and women, it's been kind of measured more in men, but in any average male in the United States who is, I guess, greater than, I think it was like 22, they have 20 to 30% less testosterone than their counterpart in 1982. And nobody's doing anything about this. Nobody's saying anything.
No, I literally, so this was not a client. This was one of my dear friends called me probably less than a week ago and said, hey, I just went and gotten tested and my testosterone's super low. He's 31. Like, his testosterone should not be low. And he goes, they told me that they could do shots. What do you think about that? And I go, well, you can do shots. It'll probably make you feel way better, way faster, and you will probably be on them for the rest of your life. Or if you get off them, you'll feel terrible. Or we can try to figure out why your testosterone is low in the first place. Like, what toxins have you been exposed to? What are you eating? What is your stress level like? Because stress level will tank your testosterone like nothing else. And it's not going to be a fast fix, but it will be a long-term fix. And he was just so thankful to have that conversation. And you're right. There are so many men who should not have low testosterone, who have low testosterone, and it is almost 100% lifestyle factors that's contributing to that.
And I think there's a lot of, I forget exactly who it was. I was trying to look it up, but it was a coalition of mothers who basically tested all the fast food in the country. I'm not sure if you saw this one. And it was really sad.
No.
Because, my son loves Chick-fil-A. And we love Chick-fil-A, so cool. And it's easy, it's and what came back though was that pretty much every fast food full of glycosylation, right? Which makes sense because they're probably using Roundup on the products that go before it, into the food production. And then what was really sad was that it was actually a Chick-fil-A sandwich actually had an avian contraceptive chemical in it, one of the most powerful endocrine disruptors. And I was just like, wow, I can't even. And there's no. It just blew me away. I mean, and this was a nonprofit. I'll try to get the exact details for the podcast, but it was just blew me away because there's so much of that, and then people are wondering why they don't feel well.
Yeah, people are wondering why they don't feel well. People are wondering why in their 30s they're having trouble conceiving. Well, maybe because they're eating a contraceptive all day, every day. Oh my gosh, I have to see that study. You have to send that to me. That's not surprising at all and horrifying.
I'll definitely send that over. It just blew me away. And I mean, I knew, you always heard about, the xenobiotics and plastics and these kind of things. And we do know the data, supports this. But I think what was also another really surprising thing that I found was just that kind of like a lack of, we have all these gigantic government agencies with all this power. We have the EPA, we have, you got the IRS doing your taxes, right? You have all these 3-letter agencies everywhere. And we spend as Americans, most Americans pay more than 51% tax, if you count the state, local, and all that together. So we pay a huge amount of money for this government. And then to find out things like, oh, by the way, the fluoride they put in the water has been in 17 studies that have shown pretty significant brain development issues with children. So essentially it's a poison to children, but hey, we're putting it in the water, and nobody does anything.
Yep. And massive thyroid issues with adults.
It was really interesting because we would have a lot of people come into the clinic and we have an ultrasound so we can see their thyroid. And, when you see people with Hashimoto's, they have a certain appearance of the thyroid. You can see the inflammation around the thyroid, and people would have this and they would cycle in and out. And even though they wouldn't have, traditionally defined Hashimoto's, they would have definitely some kind of thyroid, issue. And you could see their levels, of their thyroid hormone, the T3, T4, go up, then go down, then go, it's just it's like a roller coaster. And that's the way they describe their feeling. Oh, some days I feel great. The next day I feel totally exhausted for 3 days,
So much going on. It's so fascinating to me. I love explaining this to clients because to some degree it is so complex, right? Your thyroid function alone, your hormone function alone is such an incredibly complex mechanism. And at the same time, the way that we take care of those things is just so far from complex. It's not rocket science. It's lifestyle things like having a water filter. It's lifestyle things like eating real food that came from the ground or had a mother and is not processed. It's things like reducing your stress and paying attention to your heart rate variability. And I just think, sometimes people get into functional medicine and they get so overwhelmed because there's so much going on. And at the same time, it's also so simple. Like, there's chemical in your water, so let's drink cleaner water. Like, that simple.
And I found that study too. And so they actually have data on all the toxins, the organization, glyphosate info, everything in here. And I thought it was very interesting that they actually did this study. And this is the one that I was mentioning before. But if you actually look at it, it's definitely a scary situation. And even just, some of the most common products, that are out there are pretty scary. So it was momsacrossamerica.com that was the one who did the study.
Sweet.
Perfect.
I will look that up.
But I just want to share with all the listeners too, because I think that kind of blew my mind, because this is a third party. And I mean, it's one thing to hear people that are trying to sell something like, oh, this is really bad, so you need to buy my thing, because you're like, well, it's real, not real, But then when you see somebody who just does this and they just do it just for the good of people, I think it makes you kind of, realize,
Yeah. Yeah. It gives it a level of legitimacy that is important and powerful and, worthy of paying attention to.
One of the things that we really focus on here in the Medical Entrepreneur podcast is we try to help people that are in what we consider like mainstream medicine, and those that are escaping find all other alternatives. And I know there's huge demands for functional medicine. Could you maybe talk about like how maybe someone who's either in mainstream medicine might be able to kind of break out of that and get into helping people from a more holistic perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let's just define functional medicine real quick so that we understand what that is. So what we say functional medicine is functional medicine is root cause medicine. So instead of going and playing whack-a-mole with a bunch of symptoms, functional medicine is looking at all those symptoms and saying, okay, there's a bunch of different things going on, but those are very likely coming from one, maybe two root causes. And so if we go and treat those root causes, if we help your body heal those root causes, then all the symptoms go away. Another great analogy that I like to use is a lot of times, and I always preface this by saying I love Western medicine. I think it is super important life-saving medicine. I almost went into it, but a lot of times what Western medicine does is it walks into a burning kitchen and it turns off the fire alarm and it walks out and goes, cool, problem solved. Except that the kitchen is still on fire. And so functional medicine comes in and goes, okay, the kitchen is on fire. Let's put the fire out first. Let's not just turn off the alarm. Let's put the fire out. And then let's figure out what was the cause of that fire so that we don't start another one. That's what functional medicine is. And what I think is cool about functional medicine is it really shifts the prescription model to a lifestyle model. So the quote unquote prescriptions in functional medicine, there's some supplementation that is important for sure. But some functional medicine is not just the switch from, a pill for your ill from a prescription to a pill for your ill. Now we have a supplement. It's functional medicine. The prescription is, we need to change the way that you're eating. We need to change the way that you're thinking. We need to change the way that we're moving. We need to look at your relationships. We need to look at your stress levels. We need to look at your mindfulness levels. We need to look at you as a human as a whole, and then create a pathway or a plan. So I like to say functional medicine is like handing someone a stack of concrete stepping stones. And we say, okay, here's where you're at and here's where you want to be. And now if you can picture that stack of concrete stepping stones from Home Depot, here are the steps with which we are going to create a path from illness to wellness. And those steps are things like, we're going to look at doing an anti-inflammatory diet. We're going to look at helping you get more alkaline through food and water. We're going to help you look at immediate nutritional rebalancing, which is where supplements play a role, but they're not the answer, right? Supplements are a piece of that puzzle. They're a step in the right direction, but it's not, here's your supplement that's going to fix you. Stress is a huge one. The CDC now says that stress is more toxic than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, which I think is hilarious because I think a lot of smokers are probably a lot less stressed than the rest of us because they take a smoke break every hour.
And breathe deep, right?
So, don't take that and go smoke. Yeah, exactly. Don't take that and go pick up smoking. But But take that and go, oh, maybe taking a 10-minute break from work every hour actually is going to be good for my health. So, helping people learn how to manage their stress throughout the day, helping people learn the importance of their sleep and how to protect their sleep and prioritize their sleep. Those are all part of the functional medicine, quote unquote, prescription. And it works so quickly, which I think is really cool. We see clients come in and, we put 1 or 2 of those stepping stones in place out of a path that has 15 stepping stones. And within 2 weeks, they feel better than they did before. And then that gives us bandwidth to then take the next step. And so, yeah, that's what functional medicine is. It's whole person root cause medicine.
Man, I love that. And I just out of curiosity, I mean, you've obviously, treated, all these different patients and helped them. What do you find? Because I think a lot of people are maybe afraid that, they'll come off as, woo-woo or whatever. But there's a lot of people that, if you look at traditional, what I call mainstream medicine, and I would advise everybody, like I just remember my own personal experience, like when I got to med school, they only gave us one free book. And that free book was the Merck manual. We, of course, sponsored by Merck, right? The pharmaceutical giant. And had every disease in a drug, And I was excited because I got a free book because, I mean, man, all the books are so expensive, And, but it was just the amount of medication and indoctrination in what is considered modern medicine is very high. And then if there's anything that essentially is not medication by big pharma, there's never enough studies to support it because the studies cost so much.
Right.
So even if you had the cure for cancer, with you, like you couldn't actually, there would be unlikely that you could even get enough studies to actually prove it enough to be used as a treatment, just because there's not a big company backing it, that is planning to make money from it,
Yep. We could do a whole podcast on how maddening that is. But your question was, how does a practitioner start to get into this without coming off as woo-woo? And the answer to that is start reading. I love NCBI. I live in NCBI. There is so much good stuff in NCBI. So to give you an example, we'll just talk about gut health specifically. So, 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates, this philosopher, said all illness starts in the gut. And now we have thousands of studies that show us that that's actually probably true. We have studies that show us that 95% of our serotonin is actually created in our GI tract. So, instead of prescribing someone an SSRI that just helps their body reuse whatever serotonin they have, let's go figure out why their body isn't creating enough serotonin in the first place. And where does that start? That starts in their gut. And there are now studies that show that. That's not woo-woo. That's not pseudoscience. We have thousands of studies in NCBI that are peer-reviewed, that are excellent studies that show that. And then those studies they talk about, gut dysbiosis and the microbiome and the mucosal lining of the gut and all of these things that you can help a client or a patient heal from. And you can use an SSRI as kind of a mitigation tool to help them get some bandwidth to change their diet, but you don't have to leave them on an SSRI forever. So that's an example. Things like sleep, talking to a patient about sleep isn't necessarily sexy, right? Giving them a sleep drug, that feels sexy. That feels like, here's the thing that's going to fix your problem, but it doesn't actually fix your problem. And we now have, again, thousands of studies that show that sleep pills actually make people sleep worse. It takes them out of REM sleep. It takes them out of deep sleep. They might feel like they're sleeping, but all of those pieces of sleep that are so important to restore their body, those sleep pills remove their brain's ability to get into that, versus something like magnesium L-threonate is the only kind of magnesium that crosses the blood-brain barrier. And we now have, again, multiple studies that show that magnesium L-threonate combined with helping someone learn to get their phone out of their bedroom and get blue light out of their eyes for an hour before bed, combined with a mindfulness practice to help them calm that racing in their mind and get ready to sleep, combined with, making sure that they're not exercising an hour before bed, combined with making sure that they're not eating an hour before bed. We do those things. And now all of a sudden we have completely fixed their sleep. And if we fix their sleep, now their body's able to heal all of these other things that we couldn't even touch before. And so what I think is really cool about that is that's not woo-woo. That is so deeply science backed and we have so much research and so many peer reviewed studies. And, no one's making $1 million off magnesium L-threonate, but it's solid. Find a good high quality supplement company, help them get that, but then also, help them with their lifestyle on these other pieces. And you have fixed a person in a way that you could never have helped them heal from that prescriptive model.
That is so true. And I think, I'm sure you've seen this one as well. I'm just going to share the screen real quick here. As you probably know, Monsanto, one of the biggest manufacturers of seeds, was actually bought by Bayer, the pharmaceutical giant. And so, this is just one of the headlines. But a lot of people had questioned the deal because they paid so much for it. And so the thing, though, is that I think even the big drug companies start to realize that, like, hey, the more that we can get into food production, the more that we can control someone's health. And I think
holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, and when you think about it, it's like they way overpaid for Monsanto from a business point of view. And many people are like, why would you do that? Well, what people don't realize is just how much that can affect other people's health, which then necessitates them to use more pharmaceutical products.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's terrifying. I didn't know that. I did know the part about lab created meat, which also terrifies me. Please don't eat that if you're listening to this podcast. That is not a healthier option. But yeah, I think part of functional medicine and really part of being a practitioner, being a doctor, I'm not a doctor, I'm a health coach, but every doctor I've ever met who I've ever talked to got into the practice of medicine because they cared about people and they wanted to help people get better. And when you can step back and you can see the picture, not from this microscopic perspective of, the one free book that you were given in med school that here's the pill for this ill, when you can zoom out and you can see the whole picture and you can go, oh my gosh, this food company was just bought by a pharmaceutical company. What does that actually mean for, Jane, who is sitting in front of me on my exam table? That gives you a different perspective for how to care for and how to treat that person, because doctors care about people. And so, just giving all of our listeners the encouragement to not be afraid about being woo-woo, but to fulfill that oath of first do no harm and, care for the person in front of you. Caring for the person in front of you is sharing something like that. Like, hey, if you're eating genetically modified corn, let's talk about who owns your corn and what their goal is. Their goal is not your health. Their goal is to prescribe you something that you're going to need for the rest of your life. So let's make a different choice at the grocery store.
Absolutely. I think there's so much to be said there. And I think more and more, this is like, very common in medicine. Medicine kind of has, I'll tell you, like, it has its own culture, and the culture, changes over time, of course. But in the beginning, it was heavily influenced by Rockefeller. And a lot of people don't remember this or didn't ever read about it. But like even the American Medical Association was heavily influenced by these forces, and Rockefeller was one of the initial people who actually influenced them very much and actually gave a lot of money to medical schools with the caveat that they would have a curriculum that wouldn't talk about natural cures, would talk more about, synthetically made pharmaceutical cures.
Wow.
And that actually happened in the early 1900s. And so a lot of people didn't.
That gives me goosebumps.
And in medicine, of course, they teach us none of this. And I remember thinking back, like, I remember in medical school, one of the things that they taught us was like, about hypertension, heart disease, cholesterol, these kind of things. And, at this time when I went, it was, a while ago. And at this time, it was still under the thought, like, high levels of fat are bad, that kind of thing, And so basically, the whole idea that they were teaching was essentially that, like, basically the average person you almost have to like take control of them by prescribing them medications because they're not competent enough to figure stuff out on their own. Kind of a holistic medicine. And I will say that, like, I think that's just so much overkill because most patients are highly educated when you see them. Like, most patients aren't like that at all. Maybe one time a time ago in the past, perhaps when, things were not as connected as they were today, that might've been the case. But to assume that, like, oh, I'm going to be giving somebody medication because it's my only way to help them isn't the right message, What would you say to somebody, like, what do you find with your patients when you kind of, obviously your patients come to you, that they're seeing these different approaches. how would you describe the reaction? And for somebody who maybe has never practiced functional medicine, who's maybe like afraid that, it won't fit in with their practice, is there any advice you could give them?
I feel like that's two different questions. So I'm going to answer them separately. So the first one is, when a client comes to us, and we call them clients because we're not licensed as health coaches. That's a whole nother conversation we could have about what is a good health coach and what is a nationally board certified health coach to give doctors some vision on that. But one of the things that when people come to us, the two things that I hear all the time is hope and relief. Hope that, I wish people would come to us as health coaches first because they're, just looking at lifestyle, I can usually get someone better to a place that they might never have to go to a doctor in the first place. But most of the time, just because of culture and the way stuff is set up, people end up coming to us as a last resort. And having conversations with them about, these are the lifestyle factors that can affect your health. All of a sudden they have hope because they feel like there's something that they can actually do to affect their well-being. Whereas a lot of the experiences that they've had with doctors is, doctors don't have a prescription, or they've tried the prescription and it's made it worse, or they've tried the prescription and it hasn't helped at all. And that's a really hopeless situation. If you're putting all of your power and all of your personal authority into someone else and that someone else doesn't have the answers, that's a really hopeless situation, that we're seeing clients come to us all the time. Where I was 14 years ago, my doctor told me to eat chicken and lettuce for the next 70 years of my life. That's a really hopeless place to be. And if I had someone say, actually, let's look at the dysbiosis in your gut and the mucosal lining in your gut, and let's see if we can heal that. And now I'm completely symptom free. I can eat gluten. I can eat dairy. I'm fine. So hope is the first one that, when people come to us, all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, there's something that I can do to affect my health. Thank goodness. And then the second one is relief, which I think hope and relief go together. But the big part of that relief is we're able to spend a good chunk of time with people. Our first intake with someone is an hour long. And in most kind of traditional allopathic things, they get 30 minutes at best with their practitioner. Usually if it's a primary care, it's like 7 minutes. And so they never feel heard. They don't feel like they can ever get their whole story out. And so being able to come and tell their whole story and paint the whole picture of their health from birth till now, you just see this wave of okay, someone has heard me, this relief. And then we can give them, okay, I'm hearing that these things are impacting your health. Let's look at your sleep. Let's look at your movement. It sounds like this relationship is causing you a lot of stress. Let's talk about that. And then they have hope because they feel like they can do something. And so when someone comes to us, that's what we do. Another piece that we do just in our individual practice, clients who come to us, is we really empower our clients because we believe in Western medicine. It's important. Antibiotics are life-saving medicine. They shouldn't be prescribed for the common cold, but Western medicine is important. So one of the things that we do is we help empower our clients to go back to their primary care physicians, to go back to their OBGYNs, to go back to their endocrinologists and advocate for themselves. We empower them to go back and say, hey, your doctor has tested your T3 and your TSH, and those are both normal, but everything that you're telling me is indicative of a thyroid disorder. So go back to your doctor and please ask them to test your free T4 and to test for thyroid antibodies. And then that patient can go back to that doctor and say, hey, can you please test these things? And most of the time doctors will. And then all of a sudden we have information that shows, okay, you do have Hashimoto's and your T3 to T4 conversion isn't working. So now let's talk about how we can work on those things. That's what we do from the side of patients just coming directly to us. And then what I'm super passionate about is the other side of our business at Live Nourished, where we create collaborative care models with practitioners so that the practitioner can be the detective and can go in and can run the labs and can figure out all the things, but then they don't have to walk with that patient through learning how to read ingredients in the grocery store. Like the doctor did not sign up to practice medicine to talk to someone about how to read a label for added sugar. But we as health coaches, we do. And so we can create this collaborative care model where the doctor can create the plan, and then we can come in and we can help that patient implement that plan. And when we work in that collaborative care model, we see patient adherence and patient success go up by over 80 And we also see the profitability of clinics increase because all of a sudden we're putting that relief and that hope into the medical practice in a way that it couldn't be there with individual practitioners.
Man, you're 100% correct. And I'll tell you, like, from what I see is there's a lot of people think it's the provider's, kind of, choice as to how much time they spend with the patient. But the reality is, like, a lot of it's driven by the economics of the practice. And when you look at, like, for example, a Medicare level 1 visit, it pays $20 total. Like
that's insane.
And keep in mind, you usually have to have a billing company just to deal with all the BS with billing, because it's very common. Like, just for example, like United Healthcare, some of these other companies, they've actually been caught or been. I guess it's not illegal for them, so they freely admit it. But they actually have steps where they, like, immediately throw away 10% of all the claims that come in, so you have to refile them. So you got to have somebody who just sits there all day and just hammers away at these claims, right? Well, that's 10% of your revenue right there, going to just deal with the paperwork and following up on these things.
Wow.
Dealing with the insurance and getting them whatever documentation they request, and then if they lose the documentation, sending it again, that kind of thing. And so by the time you look at it, it's like, when you really look at what they're getting paid, is so little. And so that's why what you see people getting burned out at rates you've never seen before. You have people that really, to be quite honest, I think when they get burned out, they just don't care anymore. Because when you're trying to help somebody, it's great to help someone, but then you realize, like, you're gonna maybe get $5 from this transaction, and this person has 5 problems that you need to deal with. And if you make a mistake on one, you could get sued and lose your license. Like, the value transaction doesn't work anymore. And so that's why you see modern or mainstream medicine just getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where, like, with family members, like, I advise them to actually go, and many times I'll tell them where to go to get the blood drawn they don't need an order for a doctor. Go get your blood drawn. Let's look at it. Let's figure out that way. When you do show up for your doctor, you figured everything out. Like, hey, I got this. And that way it's easy for them, because, it's like they don't have time to think anymore. They don't get paid anymore. And so the healthcare models is falling apart. What you're doing is absolutely incredible. And I could totally see how bringing in the functional medicine into a pre-existing practice would really breathe life back into it. Because I see people, I mean, even just your example here in Texas, there is a functional medicine, doctor who essentially kind of gave up practicing medicine. And now I think she calls herself a coach as well.
Wow.
But she basically just does that. And last time I heard, she had like a 2-year wait list. And just because, people are just tired of dealing with mainstream medicine and everything's another pill, and you get 5 minutes to see the person. And during those 5 minutes, the person's busy typing on their computer because they got to generate an 8-page report,
Yep. Yeah.
It's just unsustainable. Yep. If you don't mind, I was going to ask you, like, say you're a nurse practitioner and maybe you work, like, this is an actual example of somebody I do know. There's actually a nurse practitioner here in our area. It's a friend of ours. And she loves functional medicine. She loves stuff. She reads about it. Like, she tries to implement it into her practice. So for somebody like that, what would be the best path that you could recommend for them to kind of participate in this? Is that something where maybe they could train with you and work with your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say there's kind of a 3-tier path to that. So step number 1, which is going to be the cheapest and the easiest to implement, is to create a collaborative care practice. So that nurse practitioner, if she brings in a health coach who's trained in functional medicine, what's cool about health coaching is we are trained specifically in the science of behavior change. So she's reading all of these studies. She's learning about the nutrition. She's learning about supplements. She's learning about all these things, but she probably still doesn't necessarily have the skills to help someone actually eat differently on a Tuesday. And that's a huge gap that I see, a huge issue that I see in practitioners who are moving more in a functional medicine direction, is they can learn all the things, but the thing is their knowledge doesn't actually translate into their patients doing anything differently on a weekday when their kids are busy. And so the first easiest step is to bring someone in, like a health coach or a nutritionist or someone, to work in a collaborative care model so that patients get to see both. They get the expert approach, and then they also get the lifestyle support. And then that collaborative care model, when we work with someone else, when we work with another human, I'm teaching you something, you're teaching me something, I'm teaching you something, you're teaching me something. And so it accelerates that process of learning. So that's the easiest, lowest barrier to entry. Bring someone in. You don't have to hire a health coach full time. You can use an agency like mine, but get someone in your practice who can do this with you. So that's step 1. Step 2 is look into, the next level of certification. So Institute for Functional Medicine, anybody who already has a medical degree can go back and do a year-long course through Institute for Functional Medicine to learn all of functional medicine. And in that model, you're going to have, your professor is going to be Dr. Mark Hyman, and all of these founders and fathers of functional medicine. And again, one of the fastest ways to accelerate that, but still you're learning the knowledge. You're not learning necessarily the implementation. So step 1, hire a health coach. Step 2, go back to school. Step 3, start implementing things. Move from an insurance model to a cash pay model, because insurance doesn't cover functional medicine, which again is so maddening. Just to give you like a 2-second thing on why that's so maddening. We have a client who came to us 6 months ago with an A1C of 6.7. We worked with her for 6 months. She now has an A1C of 4.6. She paid us probably $500 total. And she's like no longer a diabetic, but insurance won't cover that. Insurance will wait until you need insulin shots, and then we'll happily pay $2,000 a month for you to get insulin shots. I mean, it's just like, doesn't make any sense. But step 3 is to start to move your practice into a model where you're able to practice medicine in this way. And, talk about the removal of burnout rate. If you move from an insurance-based model to a cash pay model, you can spend as much time with your patient as you want. You can bill whatever you need. And we're starting to see the shift here in Colorado Springs. We have the Cash for Care network. And so we're a network of practitioners who, believe that we serve our patients better when we as the professional can look at that patient and decide what to do, instead of being told by a non-medical insurance company what I can do and what I can't do. So that's step 3, is to move your practice slowly but surely. You can still take insurance. You can still do some of those things, but start to create space where you can practice medicine that way. So, for a nurse practitioner who wants to get into that, number 1, get a partner in your practice. Get someone in there who you're not losing money from. If you hire a health coach through an agency model, you don't pay them unless you have a patient. So you're only adding to your profitability, but you're also creating that collaborative care model. Step 2, go learn, go back to school and get that information. And step 3, start the process of pivoting your practice so that you can practice that way more consistently.
Yeah, that's great advice. And would you ever consider, sharing maybe some stories of patients that you were able to, maybe they came to you in a desperate situation and now they're better?
Oh man, absolutely. Yeah, I can get super nerdy on that. So let me tell you a couple of my favorites. So one of my favorites is the one that I just told you about, our client who came to us with an A1C that was, at the very best pre-diabetic, but really pretty much on the borderline of type 2 diabetes. Didn't want to do metformin, didn't want to do those things. She came to us. We worked on diet, lifestyle, and stress, and she's no longer even pre-diabetic. Like, she's just better, and she'll be better for the rest of her life. I think that's so cool. Another one, this is one of my absolute favorites. So we believe really heavily in the gut-brain axis and the mental health, physical health connection. And so we have a lot of referral partnerships with counselors and psychiatrists who work with people on anxiety and depression. And again, go Google NCBI studies, depression and gut connection. And there are thousands. But one of my favorites, we had a client who got referred to us from a mental health practitioner, from a counselor. That counselor was working with that patient on trauma and anxiety and depression, and they just weren't getting anywhere. She was struggling so much. This patient also had a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, a lot of food intolerances, and a ton of inflammation. And so this counselor referred her to us. We worked with her for 3 months on getting her gut sorted out. So repairing that gut lining, learning the foods that kind of blew her up, learning the foods that nourished her body, helping teach her how to understand what food creates anxiety. Cause that's a thing. If you track your food and you look at your food 2 hours later, there are some foods that for some people spike anxiety. And that's something that no counselor can figure out, right? Like, we're trying to deal with anxiety from a mental health perspective. But if you're eating beans and 2 hours later, you're having a panic attack, like we got to remove beans or it doesn't matter what you're doing with your mental health therapist. We're not going to get there. So anyway, we helped heal her gut. We do scaling assessments. So, 10 is I'm anxious all the time. I can't function. 0 is I'm on a beach in Mexico chilling. Where are you at? In 3 months, just by working on her gut, her nutrition, and her sleep, we moved her. When she came to us, she said she was an 11. We're like, that's not on the scale, but I get what you're saying. We moved her from an 11 to a 5. Which is massive. Like that gives her bandwidth to do something else. We sent her back to her therapist, and in 3 sessions of doing EMDR and mental health practice, her anxiety went from a 5 to a 2, and she stayed there. And I think that's so cool. We're a piece of the puzzle. That counselor is a piece of the puzzle. But if we didn't work together, that counselor worked with her for 6 months and couldn't make a move on that needle of her anxiety. If we just worked with her independently, we would have gotten her to a 5, but I still think a 5 on the anxiety level is unacceptable. Like no one should be living there permanently. And so creating this collaborative care model, we were able to get her to a 2, which, a 2 on the anxiety scale feels pretty solid. I think most of us probably operate around there most of the time. So that's one of my absolute favorites. Another one of my absolute favorites that I just think is so cool. This is one of my favorites. This is part of our collaborative care model. So we are the health coach for this practitioner, and this practitioner got a patient who had all the symptoms of neurological decline, all the symptoms of dementia, all the symptoms of Parkinson's. It was not good. And he is a cowboy casserole eater, Midwest steak and potatoes kind of guy. And so, they were pretty desperate because I think he's only in his 50s and he's seeing all this neurological decline, really can't function anymore in his career, can't function anymore in his life, can't function anymore in his marriage, came to this functional medicine nurse practitioner is what she is, desperate to find a solution. And she was able to put together an incredible plan that was really helpful. But then the magic of that plan is like, this guy actually needs to stop eating sugar. This guy who has not eaten a vegetable in the last 10 years needs to eat a vegetable. And that's something that this nurse practitioner doesn't have the bandwidth really, or the skills to help that person make that decision. She can give him all the knowledge and all the information about why we have to cut out sugar and why we have to eat vegetables. But then that doesn't necessarily translate into him doing that. And so in that collaborative care model, we plugged our health coaches in and walked with this guy. At first, we talked with him every single week, and he's now eating vegetables. He has completely removed sugar from his diet, and he is almost symptom free.
Man, that's amazing.
He went from not being able to walk across his house to now he's able to work on his ranch like he was 10 years ago. And that gives me goosebumps. That makes me want to cry. And that's the power of that collaborative care model where, he needed that practitioner to put together that plan, but then he also needed a health coach to help him actually implement that. Someone who has eaten casseroles and meat and potatoes their whole life and thinks vegetables are the most disgusting thing is probably not going to go buy asparagus, of his own free will. But that collaborative care model, he has his life back. So there's a couple stories.
Absolutely. You make an amazing point because I think, medicine is funny because any other thing else we do in the world, if we want to send people to the Olympics, for example, we wouldn't take someone and not give them a coach and send them to the Olympics, right? That would be crazy.
Right.
Even the U.S. Olympics Committee, not only do they have a coach for the physical aspect of the sport, whatever they're training, but they also have a mindset coach. And that was developed in the 80s by Dennis Waitley, for example. They realized that anytime they had a mindset coach, the people actually performed better than those that didn't have one. And so you make a really great point, which is, you could be the best practitioner in the world, write the best plan, but without having somebody there to help that person, switch their mindset, help them, break their habits and do, execute that plan, chance of success is very low. And you guys are able to do that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I could not have said that better.
And I love that. I could tell you're so passionate and so excited about this. I was just wondering, in medicine, I think we're starting to realize more of the gut's power. And I think that anybody who's ever actually seen the intestines actually work in real life, as an anesthesiologist, I put people to sleep and many times they'll have open abdominal surgeries. and you'll see the intestines working on their own. And it's just a magnificent thing. I'd say between the lungs and the intestines, those are two things. If you ever get a chance to actually see them with your own eyes, they're just life changing,
Wow.
And one of the things that you can see with the intestines is like the amount of complexity that goes into eating. Even when you eat any food, the number of hormones that are released and the small like levels of cytokines and cellular messaging that goes on, it's like a symphony of different messages, to the point where your body can actually detect what food you're eating, adjust the food contents of your intestines, change insulin levels. Like, it does all this stuff automatically without anyone, thinking. You don't have to sit there and say, oh, I just ate a whole bunch of, sugary stuff, release insulin now. It just does it automatically for you. And so to assume that that's as simple as, just a tube, or that it could be overlooked, is just, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But they do that every day in modern medicine. We just kind of, oh, well, it must be something else. Oh, you're depressed. Here's an SSRI, forget its other effects, So I think you got a really great point there.
Yeah. Yeah. The gut, I think, so this is my opinion and Harvard's opinion combined. My opinion is that gut health is the future of medicine. If we can teach every doctor to start by looking at someone's gut health, I think we solve at minimum 50% of most chronic disease. At minimum. I think probably we can solve 80% if we look at gut health. Hippocrates thinks we can solve 100% if we look at gut health. And then I think the second piece of that, which this is a quote from Harvard, Harvard Medical School 3 years ago put out a study that said health coaching is the future of medicine, and any practice that does not have a health coach by the end of 2024 will fall behind their peers, because that lifestyle piece of what you put into that digestive tract is so crucially important. And what you just said triggered this thought for me. So you just said that when you eat something, your body gets information from that and makes a decision about what to do. That's something that we talk to clients about all the time, that food is not just calories or energy. It's not just energy in or energy out. It gives your body a chemical response that's different. If the chemical response that your body gets when you eat fake sugar versus when you eat broccoli, your body does something completely different. And so helping someone understand that a 0-calorie Coke is not good, because a 0-calorie Coke actually tells your body that you have a foreign invader and a virus, because it doesn't recognize the fake sugar. And so it gives you this immune system reaction. Helping someone understand that, I think, is really powerful. So yeah, gut health, everything.
And I think people also don't, like, this is my own personal opinion. There's not really any research to back it up, but as someone, as an anesthesiologist, we're able to manipulate people's consciousness, right? To put them to sleep, wake them up, adjust the levels of their consciousness. And one of the things I saw is that when you put people to sleep, there's still other consciousness that's awake, their heart still beats, the circulatory system still responds, their intestines still move, their lungs, and what I found was that over time, and you can suppress this, you can actually turn some of these off. There's times in different surgeries where you need to actually turn these off. But I personally believe that it's consciousness all the way down. Like, even the intestines are actually, not to the same level of consciousness that your mind is, but they're able to function and understand things that are going on. And I mean, I've seen this in real life where, for example, we knew somebody who had an allergy to peas, and he immediately, within 5 minutes of eating it, not even enough time to get digested in the GI system, threw it up immediately. And you got to ask yourself, how is that possible? Because, in order to even detect that, like, just imagine the chemical receptors have to detect that, then identify it, then make that action happen. It goes to show you that there's definitely some level of thinking or, consciousness that is aware of what's going on. And so I think you're 100% right. And I love the fact about the health coaches, because I think that's a great addition to anybody's practice. So, to kind of ask another question, let's say I'm a practitioner. I've got a busy medical practice. I'm doing what I can to hang in there. I'm dealing with the low reimbursements. With the last 3 years, the reimbursements haven't increased. If anything, they've got decreased, despite the fact that inflation is at minimum at least 30% higher. I'm ready to transition my practice. How do I actually do that practically? Do I just reach out to you and say, hey, I've got 2,000 patients. Like, how do I get a health coach integrated? How do I introduce them? Do you help with all that, or?
Yeah, I help with all that. So when we work with a medical practitioner, we kind of have 3 different tiers that every single medical practice is different. And so we really don't have a plug and play solution, but depending on the size of the practice, depending on how the practice runs, if it's insurance based or if it's cash pay or if it's kind of a combination, level 1 is just a referral partnership. So, if that practitioner refers to us, we give them a little kickback to help increase the profitability, because I believe that health coaching should improve patient outcomes and improve profitability. So that's kind of level 1, just like you would refer as a general practitioner to a gastroenterologist, we have referral systems that we have formalized and make that really smooth. And then also, give that practitioner a little bit of kickback if they decide to become our client. So that's level 1. Level 2 is the agency model, which is great for smaller practices, independent practices, and cash pay practices where they're maybe not quite ready. They don't quite have the patient load to hire a full-time health coach. They don't have $100,000 lying around for a whole nother salary, but we can come in and we can implement health coaching in their practice. We work with that practitioner to figure out how their practice runs, how we can implement a health coach in a way that makes sense, because a lot of times I'll see practitioners just go out and hire a health coach on their own. And then instead of increasing patient outcomes, decreasing practitioner work and increasing profitability, it decreases profitability because they don't really know how to use a health coach. It actually increases the workload on the practitioner because now the practitioner is trying to manage the health coach and all the patients. And that's not good. We don't want that. So the agency model helps those kind of smaller independent practitioners implement health coaching in a way that makes sense for their business model, that makes sense for their patients, and that makes sense for them, and kind of teach them how to use that. And we do all of the back end stuff on that. So that's level 2 is an agency model. And then for a practitioner who's in the insurance model, who has 2,000 patients, who's just drowning, I can come in as a consultant and again, look at your practice model, look at where your revenue is coming from. There's 3 codes that you can bill insurance for health coaching. They're tier 3 codes at the moment. So some insurance will reimburse, some will not. But I'll come in as a consultant and look at, okay, if you have 2,000 patients in your practice, hiring an internal health coach probably is the right decision for you because your practice is that big. But let's make sure that we do that in a way that supports you, that supports your practice, that takes work off your plate, not adds work to your plate. And so I'll come in and really help that practitioner design their practice around getting that implemented in a way that makes sense for all parties involved, patients, practitioner, office staff, et cetera. And so that's kind of the top tier is I'll come in as a consultant and help you do that in a way that's not just hiring another employee that now you have to manage and figure out what to do with someone that you don't know what to do with. So yeah, regardless of the size of your practice, regardless of where you're at, we can help you make that happen.
Man, that's amazing. I think that's a really much needed service because I know there's a lot of there's another friend of mine. He's a primary care physician, and then he has no time because he's always so busy, And just like that, that would be a great solution for him.
Yeah, we have one practice that we worked with who's like that. The practice had a 6-month wait list, and the doctor was working 20 hours a day. I don't even know how he was drowning. And we came in and within 8 months got him from a 6-month wait list to a 1-month wait list and got him, back to working 8 hours a day so that he could have time with his family. And I think that's the power of health coaching. And then, we also track metrics. His patient outcomes increased, referrals to his clinic increased because he's doing a better job than he even was before. And he's an incredible practitioner. So yeah, to all of you practitioners listening, there is hope. You can practice medicine the way that you dreamed of practicing medicine. And I would encourage you to not try to do it alone.
And what would you say for anybody who's, they're out there, they want to have their own practice, that they've trained in functional medicine? Would you tell them that it's difficult to find patients that are interested in functional medicine, or is it easy?
No, it's not hard. I would say it's pretty easy. I have 2 kind of business consultants who I work with. One is a marketing company that specializes specifically in functional medicine practitioners, because a lot of times, we're practitioners, we're not marketing directors. And so the first half of the puzzle is figuring out how do I design a practice around functional medicine. The second half of the puzzle is figuring out how do I get people who want this. And so that second piece of the puzzle is where we bring in a marketing team that understands functional medicine, that understands what you want to do. And there is a plethora of patients and clients who are looking for that. We just have to get you in front of them. So, again, this is my own opinion because I have run a business by myself now since 2016. Well, I say by myself. It has absolutely not been by myself. I have had a lot of help on that marketing side. because that's where I see practitioners who go out on their own. That's where the burnout comes in is, I'm not a marketer. How on earth do I tell people that I'm here now and that I can practice in this way? And so making sure that that practitioner is supported, not just with their medical team, their doctor, their nurse practitioner, their health coach, but also supported with their business team so that they can practice medicine and they don't have to figure out how to write funnels, how to figure out ads, how to do word of mouth marketing. That's the other piece of that puzzle is, reach out to me. I'll happily connect you with those people, but build a team around you so that you're not doing it on your own. And you can do that very budget friendly. That does not have to be a multiple $1,000 thing.
And I love that. One of the things that we also work well with are medical spas and people that are practicing aesthetic medicine, because for a lot of people that are trying to escape mainstream medicine, aesthetic medicine is very popular. It's kind of a fairly easy thing to even do part-time to kind of get you a little bit closer to escaping the mainstream medicine world. And so if you, for example, had a medical spa where you have people that are already coming in, they're cash pay, so they understand, they obviously see value for the money they spend. How might you also implement functional medicine in such an organization?
Oh, that's such a good question. That's an easy jump. So if you already have people who are coming into your medical spa who already like you said, already understand cash pay, already understand how this works. First of all, the practitioner has to learn functional medicine, right? We want to practice ethically. We don't just want to say, yeah, I can do functional medicine and then not. So step one is learning, get into NCBI, find someone who can do this with you, go back to school. So step one is learning it. But then step two is creating a package or a membership around that. So I'm a huge fan of memberships in those kind of models because from a business perspective on the medical side, it gives you MMR or monthly recurring revenue, which is massive for your clinic, right? If you can make $6,000 a month without a ton of work, that's a big deal. So step one is learn functional medicine so that you can truly provide what you're saying you can provide. And then step two is give me a call and let's do a consult and let's figure out a business model that's going to work for you, whether that's, these are kind of higher ticket packages, or this is what a monthly membership would look like. And then let's figure out what's included in that package and included in that membership so that it's not just the provider providing that. It's also, the health coach. It's also the nutritionist. It's also maybe IV, like liquid IV kind of things, especially in an aesthetic practice. That's a really easy add. So that's what it would look like is learn it. And then build a business model that makes sense and then start talking to your patients about it. Say, hey, you're coming in for aesthetic medicine. You're coming in for Botox in your face. You're coming in for, liposuction, whatever. Do you have gas and bloating? Would you like that to go away? Let's talk about that. I can help you with that. I noticed that you have eczema. How's that going for you? Have you ever thought about maybe looking at the root cause of that eczema? I can help you with that root cause. We don't have to just do steroid creams. We can make that go away forever. Would you be interested in that? Cool. We've got this membership. This is what it looks like. And then we go from there. So.
Man, I love that. That's definitely something that I think is going to take over in the future, because just from what I see with the medical spas, we work with, many of them are already doing, some hormone replacement. They're starting to do more and more supplements and these things, primarily around beauty, but that audience that is coming to that medical spa, in many cases, I personally think the medical spas are going to be like the next generation of primary care, or cash only primary care, if you will, because people are already coming there anyway. They're getting a facial every other month or something, but now they can get the facial. They can also get their functional medicine. They get any kind of hormone issues or whatever seen. So I could see how that'd be so useful.
Yeah, totally. And you just keep giving me things. With the hormone replacement one, functional medicine fits in so beautifully with that, because I think a lot of people just think of hormones as estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, but hormones are also, vitamin D3 is a hormone. Your body produces hormones when you sleep. Human growth hormone is the only way you can get that is by sleep and rest. And so helping people understand, okay, we can put pellets in your hips to help you balance these kind of sex hormones. But there's 17 other hormones that if we can balance those, and we don't have a magic fix for that, if we can balance those, you're actually probably going to need a significantly lower dose of this pellet in your hip. And that pellet in your hip will last longer if we can get all of these other hormones functioning properly. And that's where functional medicine can come in and be both an incredible profit center and help patients more than you ever could with just hormone replacement.
So Hally, where was the best way for people to reach out to you or find you?
Yeah. So our website, www.livenourished.coaching.com, is the best way. When you go to our website, it'll ask you if you're coming as a client or if you're coming as a practitioner. If you're coming as a practitioner, just click practitioner and it will take you to the page that talks about, options and how to plug health coaching in and a little bit about who we are. So, go there, click the link to book a call with me, and let's hop on a 15 or 30-minute connection call, talk about your practice and talk about how we can grow it.
Man, Hally, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the Medical Entrepreneur Podcast. You shared so much. I'm really so grateful to have you.
Thank you, Adam. It's been a joy to be on. Thank you so much.